What is this guy doing by the roadside in difficult times like these? You guys may be wondering. Well, I'm up to something finally. I have come up with yet another presentation on the Soft Talk channel. So, welcome to the show. I would like to begin this presentation with a question, a foolish question. Do you guys do window shopping of books? You can ask that question to me also, and I reply, I do window shopping of books occasionally. Why? This thing is getting quite infectious. This asking of foolish questions is getting like quite infectious. You can ask that question, of course. Uh, my answer would be because I have ample time, because it is within my constitutional rights, because window shopping of books is not like book lifting, it's not a crime. A series of similar foolish questions can follow, and I can respond equally foolishly. But for now, let's move this show forward. Common sense is so uncommon in this universe, especially in our part of the planet also. About the other worlds out there, whether life exists in those worlds light years away from our beautiful planet, I don't know. Whether like there are creatures out there, what kind of creatures, if at all, I don't know at all. Perhaps Jeff Bezos does. Perhaps Elon Musk does. Perhaps our very own KP Oli, the learned former Prime Minister, does. Perhaps our dear Rajesh Hamal Dai does. Or perhaps our Rishi Munis of the yore know about it. Maybe they have written about those fascinating, mysterious, awe-inspiring worlds and mythical creatures living there in some of their ancient tombs. But right now, I don't have the energy to turn on those annals of prehistory, travel back in time, and make preparations for an intergalactic travel. Which brings me back to the topic once again, window shopping of books. Let me recall an incident here. One fine evening last week, one lazy evening last week, I was busy with my favorite pastime. I guess you know by now what my favorite pastime is. That is window shopping of books. There, at my usual hangout, a couple of new arrivals seemed to have outshone several others. It was just like some supposedly bright kids outshining other kids, even on the very first day of a school year, just because they are extroverts. On display at that famous bookshop was the biography of a former US president with his larger than life grin. I don't know what that grin was all about. But I would just give you a clue about this big gun, who this big gun is. This former big gun had featured in quote unquote the golden pages of where else but the Nepali print media recently for working in a company by leaving aside his presidential baggage. At that time, comparisons were made between quote unquote the humble fellow and our good for nothings that have been in national politics for decades. At that time, once again, our good for nothing uh, came under fire for their below par performance, a very below par performance for which they came under fire once again. Let me give you another clue about this famous personality. These days, his teenage daughter is hogging the limelight. Where else except in the Nepali press? Uh, the region, she is working as a cashier in a famous address in a restaurant to just fund her studies. The way our media guys glorify the everyday struggles of celebrities, quote unquote celebrities, can surprise even the most reputed spin doctors. These media guys fail to understand that one has to make a living even after leaving the high office if he or she has not had the opportunity to make fortunes lasting generations while they were in the high office. Also, quote unquote, these celebrities want to lead productive lives post retirement. It is not only after money that they are after, they want to lead productive lives, fulfilling lives. And their children cannot afford to rest on their parents' laurels in a competitive society where everyone strives to live up to their full potential. I guess that is enough of clue giving about this personality for now. Next to his display was a huge display highlighting the biography of a former US First Lady. It provided the highlight. The display provided a brief of what the book is all about. This display highlighted how, quote unquote, this myth busting supermom had raised her two beautiful daughters and established herself as a fashion sensation at the famous address at the White House while perfectly fulfilling the duties of the First Lady. Then there were our own crop of quote unquote luminaries. One was this huge display about a former Maoist leader turned former First Lady turned Janata Samajwadi Party leader. If I keep taking these turns, my head will spin. I fear. That's why I am not taking any further turns about this famous personality. And besides, I don't want this piece, this presentation turned into biographies of quote unquote our glitterati. The last display that was opposite the mouse leader was the cover of a book by a retired general of the National Army. It was on two very important topics: geopolitics and geostrategy. Despite trying really hard, I can't recall what was written on that display. Looking back, I feel like human mind, history does not even bother to spare a few lines for people and institutions that fail to stand the test of times. This line is also a prelude to my own predicament, my own professional setbacks, my own failures, shortcomings, etc. It's not only a scathing comment on someone else. While pouring through huge displays, my head spun at that famous bookstore. There were these larger than life figures, and here I was, an ordinary citizen who was definitely not going to set the Thames on fire. An ordinary citizen who was just going about his life, engaging himself in his everyday struggles. Then and there, while I was just window shopping, a child came up to me asking for some money. At that instance, it dawned on me once again that all these so-called greats that featured in those huge displays, they had no solution to the problems of this day and age. Whether it was the coronavirus pandemic, whether it was joblessness, and a deepening and widening abject poverty associated with that pandemic, the climate change, and a myriad other problems. Suddenly, at that moment, all these personalities looked like props turned into some mythical creatures. This turning of props into mythical creatures was aimed at selling books written on or by them. It appeared to me at that instance. It also dawned on me that we would not have found ourselves in a difficult pass at this juncture. We would not have found ourselves between the devil and the deep blue sea if some of these self-styled superhumans had a sense of the future and a firm vision to deal with this crisis and a myriad other problems we face today. That was a moment of awakening for me. Since that awakening, I have stopped searching for supermen and superwomen in bookshops. Well, that was the very first episode of Sidekick, my new show on Soft Talk. I ask you to comment on my presentation, uh, point out areas of improvement. Of course, I need to spice up this whole conversation, this whole presentation. Nonetheless, I ask you to share the presentation, subscribe it, and like it. Uh, Thank you for being there all along. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening.